What's up guys, it's DevBird here, and in this episode we are going to be handling a simple combat system. I'm not going to go super in depth for this one, we're just trying to get this combat system done so that we can work on other systems. And so what I've gone ahead and done is I have these sprites here. When I hit play, they're going to attack, and so this is the sprites I'll be using. It's not going to fit our character exactly because I'm not an artist. These aren't my sprites. I found them on Google Images, so this is what I'm using. And so it's not going to match the character, but that's fine for this purpose. We're just trying to get an example in. And I've gone ahead and created the animations for it. So I have link, attack, down, left, right, and up. And you want to make sure that loop time is off for this one because we don't want the attacks to loop. And you're going to be doing this the exact same way you've done the player movement animations here. It's the exact same process, so you do that first, and then once you have that, then we can get started. Alright, so let's get started on the setup for this. And so we already have our sprite animations, now we just need to hook it up to our animator. So let's go to our player and then go to our GFX where our animator is, and we're going to go to the animator tab, and we're going to simply click on walking and then hit Ctrl D to duplicate. And so we're going to duplicate our walking and then just replace the information inside of it with the new sprite animations. So let's rename walking 0 to attacking. And we're going to double click, and we have our blend tree here. We're going to click on our blend tree, and you see our walking animations, and we're just going to simply replace them with our attacking animations. And so we want to have them be the correct one respectively. So we're going to click on the first one, and it's going to see that it's link walk right, so we're going to replace that with link attack right, and link walk forward with link attack down. I changed the name, but it should be link attack forward, but same thing. So link walk left with link attack left, and finally link walk back with link walk up. And that should be it for that. The next thing we need to do is we need to create the transition to them. So we're going to click on walking and make a transition to attacking, because we want to be able to go from walking to attacking, and we also want to be able to go from idle to attacking. And then we also want to be able to go from attacking to walking and attacking to idle. So we have our transitions there, and now we need to create the boolean to make sure that we're not always just going to attacking. That would be strange. We need to create a boolean, and if is attacking is true, then we can go to is attacking. But if it's not true, then we don't want to go to attacking. So now we need to set the condition up. So make sure when you're going from walking to attacking, the arrow is pointing to attacking. And we're going to add the condition of is attacking to true. And we want to disable the has exit time, because we don't want to have to wait until the animation of your walking is over. When you hit attack, it should go off immediately. So we're going to do the exact same thing over here from idle to attacking. We're going to take off has exit time, then we're going to add the condition is attacking to true. So now when attacking is true, we're going to immediately go to attacking, and then once our attack is over, we're going to go back to either idle or walking, depending on if you're pressing a button or not. So that's all set up here, and now we can go to the coding aspect. Alright, so let's get to the coding aspect of this video. So we're just going to go to the player movement script. So this is where we set the walk animation and stuff like that, and the idle. And so we need to make sure that we're not attacking, and if we're not attacking, then we can call this code here. But what if we are attacking? We don't want to make walking true or go to idle, so let's make sure that none of this works. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to say if, and then we're going to do anim dot get bool. So we're not going to set the bool, we're just going to get it, and we need to know if this bool is true or not. And then we're going to throw in the is attacking string. And so if we are so this will return if we are or if we're not attacking. And so we're going to say we need to know if we're not attacking, and if we're not attacking, then we can call this code here. So what if we are attacking? Then well, simply put, we just don't call this code. That's all that needs to happen. And then we need to finally set up the hotkey, or just the input, to make attacking equal to true. I'm going to put it here because we're in the update, and plus I want to make it so that if we are frozen, we also can't attack. Normally you would do this in probably another script, like we're in our player movement script, but we just want to get a really quick, robust combat system in our RPG. Combat's not going to be our focus for this game that we're trying to make. So we're just going to quickly put a very, very simple combat system. So we're going to do input.getKeyDown, and then say key code, and for this we'll put Z. So Z is going to be our attack button and also our interact button. And then finally we need to make anim.setBool, and we need to make the is attacking set to true. And just like that, our is attacking will become true when we hit Z. So now there's one last little issue we have, and that's is attacking never goes back to false. So how do we make is attacking false? Well, we could create a method that gets the attacking duration, and at the end of duration it goes back to false. But that's a lot of coding. We're just trying to get something quick and simple done. So what we can do is we can go into our animations here. So go to the animation window, located in the Windows tab, and then we're going to go over to our link attacks, but we make sure we clicked on GFX where our animator is, or else it won't let you edit them. And so here we have our attacks, left, right, up and down. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add an animation event at the end of the animation. And then we're going to add a snippet of code to activate, which is going to set the attack back to false. And so we need to actually set this up first, because we can't just make it false. Alright, so we need to make the is attacking to false, because right now it's true, but it never goes back to being false, which means that we're always going to be attacking, which is not what we want. We want it to end whenever our animation is over. So we could make a method that tracks the duration of the animation and then sets it to false, but that's a bit tedious to do, but you should probably do it if you have a larger scale game. But for this, since this is just a little prototype, more or less, we're going to, or at least the combat is a prototype, we're going to create a script that will handle it, and we're going to be using the animation event to make it false. So you're going to want to go to your animation, and then you're going to want to go to the last frame, and you know what the last frame is because you see this you see how this blue line, or this blue part is like a little bit a different color than this part here. That's how you know that this is the last frame that gets called. So if I were to move this over, you can see it moved too. And so we're going to put this here. I'm going to add the animation event. And you see that we can't actually call any functions yet, because if we go to our GFX, our player movement script is on a different object. So we need to create a script. We'll call this animation helper. And so we can just add like little animation event helpers methods onto this script. And we are going to simply, first we need the animator. So public animator. There we go, anim. And then what we're going to do is create a public void. It has to be public. Public void set attack false. And then we're simply going to say anim dot set bool. Oops. And then we want the is attacking. We want to set that to false. And so the last bit we need to do is we need to go over to our GFX, and we're going to add the animation helper, and we're going to drag in our player. Oops, we're going to drag in our GFX, sorry. This is where our animator is. And then now if we go over to our function, we can do set attack false. And that's because this script is on the same object, and so we can have access to that method. Alright, so now that we have our set attack method set up, we're going to delete this animation event because we're not in the right animation. That was just for example. And so we're going to go to our link attack down, and we're going to go to last frame. We're going to add the event set attack false, and we're going to go over to our link attack left, do the same thing for all of them. Set attack false, and then finally link attack up. We're going to add the event, and that should do it. Alright, before we test it, there's one last thing I forgot, is that when we go from attacking to idle or walking, it doesn't know which one it should go to. So we need to do the same thing here, and make it so that if we're not walking, so if is walking is false, then we go to idle. But if is walking is true, then we go to our walking animation. And then we can turn off the has exit time, because we want to immediately transition to idle or walking once our animation is over. So let's go back to our game, and when I hit Z, you see me attack here. Alright, so let's create a very simple enemy script, and all we want to happen is we're going to want to attack the enemy, and then once their health goes to 0, they'll die. And we'll expand upon this system in the future, but for now we're going to just have the enemy, and he's just going to sit there, do nothing, and he's just going to die. In the future we'll have things like health bars, damage numbers will pop up, and the enemy will also attack too. And we'll set it up so that we'll be able to do that quite easily. But for now, we're just going to do the simple setup portion of this tutorial. So we're going to create a folder, called it enemy scripts. Let's capitalize the S for that real quick. Open it up, and then we're going to create a script and call it base enemy. So this is the script that all enemies will have on them, or I should say all enemies will derive from base enemy. So you have to think to yourself, what do all enemies have in common? And for this, in my game at least, all enemies will have HP, and they will have they will do something when they die, and for this they'll probably just disappear. So what we have to do is, well, we need to create our health amount. I'm actually making it private. So private float enemy health, and then we're gonna want to hit Alt Enter, and then where it says encapsulate field, we're gonna hit Enter. And this is a property, and we just encapsulated the field, and so this will let us know whenever we set or whenever we get enemy health, we can do something special. But for now, this will do. And so the next part, we have health, and then we're going to set up a couple of things. We're going to set up the death and the take damage portion. So all enemies can take damage, right? So I'll make a public void and call this take damage. And we're going to pass through a integer and call this damage, because in the end we want our damage to be a whole number. But if you don't want your damage to be a integer, you can make it a float value. So we want to make enemy health with the capital E. We don't want to use the lowercase e, or else it won't call these parts. So if we have special code here, they won't get called if we use the lowercase enemy health. You always want to use the capitalized one, or this one, so that we know that we're calling this portion of the code. And then we want to make it minus equal damage. And so it's going to subtract the amount that we pass through, and the enemy will take that much damage. So the next part is the death portion. And in the death portion, usually you would have things like the enemy would grant you experience, drop items, and stuff like that. But in our case, the only thing our death is going to do is it's going to make the game object set equal to false. So we're just going to turn off the game object, pretty much. Alright, so now we need to check whenever our enemy takes damage to know if they're dead or not. And so the way we do that is, well, whenever we set the value, it means that we changed it, right? And so now all we need to do is check if enemy health with the lowercase e, because we don't need to call this code here since we're already inside of it. So if enemy health is less than or equal to 0, which means that we're dead, then what we do is we call the death function. And with that, that's pretty good. And typically, we're not going to set the health in the base enemy script. Usually, we'd have like another script that derives from this one, where you can set the health manually, because you don't want to set the health here, or else all enemies are going to have the same health, and obviously, like, you'd want enemies to have different health. But for our example, we're going to make enemy health equal to, let's say, 100. And we'll probably get rid of this later. Well, we'll definitely get rid of this later, but for now, this will do. So enemy health is going to start off at 100. So all enemies will have 100 health. So now, we're just going to create a quick 2D sprite. Give it a character here. We're going to make the layer to the background layer. So this is going to be our enemy. And then we're going to drag and drop our base enemy script here. And so our enemy has health, and just for testing purposes, whenever we take damage, we're going to debug.log our health. Now the final thing we need to do is actually set up the damage portion. Like right now she's not going to take damage because we're not dealing any damage. So how do we deal damage? Well, we're going to go over to our player GFX. It's going to move him a little bit. And basically what we're going to do is that whenever we reach a certain frame, probably like this one here, we're going to deal damage. And so how do we set this up? Well, first what we're going to do is we're going to create, turn that off real quick, create a empty object and call this weapon colliders. And we're going to, you have to make sure that it's under the GFX because we need it to follow the character around basically. And we're going to create 4 colliders, one down here, left, up, right, and whatnot. So we're going to create a empty and call this like left collider. Call it left col for collider. And then we're going to create the collider for it, and this will be a box collider for my case, and we're going to move it to the left side here and make it that's actually would work for our case. We're going to create 3 more, and we're just going to duplicate 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to rename this to right collider. And then we're going to move this over to the right side, and then we'll make this down collider, and move this over to the bottom side, and then finally up collider, and we're going to move this up here. And so I'm going to then select all of them and make sure that they're triggers because we don't want them to actually collide into stuff. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is actually set the animation. Well, we have the animations, but we need to know when to turn on the colliders and when to turn them off. So we're going to go over to our link attack down, and we can see him attack. But at this specific frame here, we're going to turn the collider on so that it deals damage to whoever's there. And we're going to turn it off on the next frame. So on this frame it's going to deal damage, and the next frame it'll be off. And so first we need to turn off all the colliders, so select all your colliders and hit the disable button for the box collider. The next part is we're going to hit record and go over to the frame that we want to deal damage, and we're going to turn the collider on, and then we're going to turn it off the next frame. And we're going to do the same thing for each animation here. So left, going to turn it on here. We're going to left collider, turn it on, right collider for next frame, turn it off. Do the same thing for each one. Here is good. Right collider on, and then off. And then last but not least, the up. Hit record. Up is on, and then off. Alright. So the final thing we need to do is add a script onto each collider. And we need to know if we collided into an enemy, and if we do collide into an enemy, then we need to deal damage to that enemy. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a new script, And we can put this in our player scripts and call this weapon damage. And for this, what we're going to do is we're going to say public void on trigger enter 2D if what we collide into, so we're going to check the tag collision dot tag is equal to enemy, and if it is equal to enemy, then we can get the base enemy script. So we're going to get component, and we're going to get the base enemy script, and then we're going to call the take damage function, and then we're going to then just add a arbitrary number, let's say 25, and later on we'll have stats and we'll deal damage equal to the amount of like attack power that you have, but for now it's just going to be an arbitrary number. And you might be thinking, well, this enemy.tag part, we didn't create a tag for this, so let's do that right now real quick. And so we're going to go over to our new sprite, and we'll call this test enemy real quick, and we're going to see that's untagged. We're going to add a tag. We're going to hit plus, and we'll create the enemy tag, save that, and it didn't set it, we just added it, and so now we have to set it. Well, that's kind of tedious to do, right? Having to set the tag for each enemy, like what if you forget? Well, since all enemies use the base enemy script, or at least derive from it, right? We can say on the start, game object dot tag is equal to enemy. And so now, if I didn't have this, and I just hit play just so for you to see, it's going to immediately go to enemy. Alright, so we have our weapon damage, and we can add it to each collider here so that it will deal damage properly. And the last thing we need to do is make sure the test enemy we have here, that it has a collider attached to it. So we're going to attach a circle collider 2D, because if it doesn't have a collider, then how does the game know that it collided with the object? Alright, so let's test this out, and I'm just going to move this enemy to a place where there's no items around them, because I don't want to pick up items. And when I hit Z, they're going to take damage, and a little message will pop up in the console. So here it did 25 damage, so they're at 75 now. 50, 25. I'm going to hit Z one more time, they're going to disappear, and there you go, they're gone. And so this is a very, very simple combat system we have here, but in the future we're going to make it a bit more complex. But most importantly, we're going to be integrating this with other systems like a questing system, because how can you have quests if you can't kill enemies and whatnot, and how can you have stats if you don't have a basic combat system, because all that is going to affect our combat in the end. So that's it for this video, and next time we'll be probably expanding on this just a little bit, adding health bars, adding numbers popping up, and maybe the enemy will also attack us, chase us around, and maybe some patrolling too. But I really want to get to a questing system, so let's get through this quickly in the future. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. I'd like to thank my Patreons, Alejandro, Kovian, Bay, Emerson, Kirijo, Polybius, and Yoan. If you want to become a Patreon, you can support me at patreon.com/devbird, where you can join my Discord, or you can just join the Discord in the link description below. And you can suggest videos or ask me questions, and I'll see you guys next time.